Good day, guys, Ostini, and in this one today we're going to be setting up the CITRA emulator. Now this is an emulator which brings us the Nintendo 3DS to our PC. In this one today we're not just going to be setting it up and get our games working, we're going to be setting up and pushing it to the absolute maximum, so you can get full resolution pushed all the way to 4K, 60 frames per second wherever possible, and of course we're just going to be pushing everything to the maximum as always. Yep, it's going to be a lengthy one, probably pushing up to about 25 minutes, but this one will cover every game so you can get everything from the 3DS up and running on your PC. Of course, if it's compatible with the emulator. Now, this emulator has been pushed to the limit from the actual developers. You don't need a beast of a PC to run this anymore. In fact, you can pretty much run this on what I would classify as a potato PC by this kind of standard. So i3s, you're all good. Internal GPUs, you're all good. And we'll cover that more in depth through the emulator. I don't just give you the fish, I give you the fishing rod so you can eat as many fish as you want for the rest of your life. So by the end of this tutorial today, you will know exactly how to work the 3DS emulator, how to get the absolute maximum out of it. So in other words, those of you who want to sit on the couch with a controller on the big screen and see these games in all their crystal clear beauty, we're gonna get doing that today. And to be honest, this one is epic. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So to get this set up on our PCs, the first thing that we're going to need to do is go to the official CITRA website to get this emulator downloaded. Now there is various other locations such as unofficial builds and builds that are being made by other people, and you may see some joy and all that kind of stuff, but to be honest, the official CITRA is the most up-to-date, and for me, I get the most performance from it. Of course, there are ones specific to a certain game. This is an open source program, so people can make and do things however they want. But for me, to get the most performance out of all the games and have it the most stable, I use the official build. So this is the website, links in the description down below. It will guide you to here. Now, by the time you're watching this video, obviously things may have changed. There may be different pictures, the layout might be slightly different, but the overall vibe and theme shouldn't change that much. So at the top, we've got all the tabs, peruse at your own leisure. But for us, we're going to get stuck straight in and download this. So for me, I've got a little tab here saying download for Windows. So I'm going to click on that. It will guide me to this section of the website where I can actually download it. Peruse all this at your own leisure. I'm sure it's very informative. But for us, we're going to get stuck straight in and download it. There is no 32-bit support for this. Obviously, for those of you on ancient computers or lower end systems. Yep, it can run on a potato now, but we can't run on that bad of a potato. So once that's downloaded, then go to whatever it's downloaded to and run the program. This will basically launch the CITRA emulator wizard, which will guide you through everything that is needed to get it up and running on your system. So as you can see, welcome to the CITRA setup wizard. There is a tab here called settings, but don't really mess around with anything in here. This is more for advanced users, so you don't need to care about that. What we want to do is click on next. Then what we want to do is tell it where we want to install CITRA. You can put it wherever you want, but for me, for the ease of this video, I'm going to install it on my desktop. So, well, it's easy for me to get amongst and show you guys. So I'm going to click on browse. I'm then going to go to my desktop. I'm then going to make a folder on my desktop called CITRA. So CITRA. I'm going to click into here and then I'm going to put select folder. As you can see, it's now put the location to that, and then all I need to do is click on next. Now, at this stage, there is two versions of CITRA that we can download. We've got one called the Nightly and we've got one called Canary. Now, I want to highlight them both. Nightly is the most stable version of CITRA. If we hover over it, it should give me a little box. As we can see, the nightly builds of CITRA are the official tested versions of CITRA that are known to work. So in other words, these are the most trusted versions of CITRA. It's got all the enhancements and everything that have been around for some time. Everything's been tested. The developers and most of the people in the community know exactly what's happening in here, and it's got the most support. However, what it's not got is many of the new features that are pushed out almost daily, and that is in the actual Canary build, and that's the one we're going to focus on today, because yep, it's not 100% I would say stable, but what it has got is often better speed increases, it's got better enhancements, better options. Yep, from time to time you may get unlucky and download a build that isn't as compatible for your system or has got a few bugs in there, but to be honest, I get the most performance and the most joy using the Canary build. It used to be called the Bleeding Edge. I wish they'd just call it like the beta and the most stable version, then people would know what it is. But let's focus on these and download them both. So make sure they're both ticked, click on next. This bit is for the general public license. So in other words, this is an open source emulator, so anybody can work on it. People can do whatever they want, except things that aren't in the license. So peruse this at your own leisure. Make sure you're all up to date on it. Click on I accept the license. Click on next. And this bit is just as you would with any other Windows program. It's asking you, do you want to make a start menu shortcut? I'm going to leave everything as standard. Click on next. Then it's going to say, well, let's install this puppy. So I'm going to click on install. And now it's going to go to the official CITRA download location and download it to your PC. So yeah, by using CITRA, again, we're going to be using the Canary build today because I get the most performance out of there. If there's something that's just been released, it's straight in there. And I have not had a problem in the couple of years of me running this from using those type of builds. Yeah, we may get unlucky from time to time, but 99% of the time, we're good to go. So once that's done, then click on finish. It will exit out of there, and as you can see on our desktop, we've now got a folder that we just created and has the emulator in there. Obviously, if you locate it in a different location, travel to wherever it is you installed it, and then get inside the folder. And the first thing you're greeted with is the maintenance tool. Now, it used to leave a little shortcut on your desktop to actually launch all this kind of stuff. It doesn't seem to do that anymore. But we don't really want to bother with this. It basically takes care of itself. So every time you launch up CITRA, it will check on the website, see if you're using the most up-to-date version. And if you're not, then it will prompt you to actually download and, well, install it. It takes care of itself, which is absolutely awesome. So as you can see, we've got two folders in here, one called Canary and we've got one called Nightly. For us, like I said, we're going to be focused on Canary, so I want to go into here. Now, you've got three application files, one called CITRA, QT, and one called Room. Now, for the actual emulator and the one that we want to make the magic with, we want to use CITRA QT. And to make things easier for ourselves, what I'm going to do is highlight it, right-click, create shortcut, and there we go. Now, I can drag this onto my desktop, and so I don't need to go through all this gunt and all this, well, crap to actually just play CITRA. So what I'm going to do now is rename it. So CITRA Canary, and you can also make one for Nightly if you want to go down that route also, but we're going to focus on this so I know exactly what it is that I'm launching each time. So first things first, what we want to do is set up everything with the emulator so it's ready to rumble, to be honest. So you've got various tabs along the top. I want to focus on the emulation tab. There's one on there called configure, and it'll bring you a box similar if not identical to this one. I want to stretch this up so I can see all the tabs at once. And as you can see, we've got various tabs. We'll run through them now to get it all set up. The first one you don't really want to mess around with because it's all set up as default. You won't get no added performance by messing around with anything from here. In fact, by disabling CPU JIT, you'll see basically a PowerPoint presentation when you're playing the game because it's running so slow. Make sure that is enabled. Region doesn't really mess around with it. Put it on auto select. Theme wise, if you click onto dark, then it basically makes this darker so it's not as bright on your screen. But I'm going to keep it as default. Next thing then, system. Put in all your personal details if you want to in this bit. Makes no difference whatsoever for the actual game. Next bit, set up your controller. Now, some controllers may need to be turned on before you actually launch up CITRA. So if your controller isn't being recognized when we're doing this bit now, exit out of CITRA and turn on your controller, then come back into CITRA and your controller should be recognized. Controllers that I believe are acceptable from this emulator are anything that's X input or direct input, anything along those lines. Basically, if Windows can use your controller in any of your games or anything like that, then you should be good to go. I've not heard of anybody with any crazy stories of not being able to get this to be configured. So once that's up and running, then I'm going to turn my controller now, because mine's pretty compatible. I'm using an Xbox One S pad, by the way, guys. Now, thing is, controlling your set up your controls. If you're using an Xbox controller, remember that this is the Nintendo layout. So the A and the B buttons and the X and the Y buttons are the opposite way around. So for me, with my Xbox pad, I'm going to put the A button as B. I know it sounds crazy. B button as A. X button as Y. And the Y button as X. Next thing then, bumper buttons. So I'm going to do the left bumper button, right bumper button, left trigger, right trigger. C-stick, this is the stick that's to the right of the screen on the 3DS. So I'm going to be using my rightmost analog stick. So you can go through it and do it this way. However, to get the proper sensitivity with all this, click on set analog stick. And it says, after pressing OK, first move your joystick horizontally, in other words, left or right, and then use it, and then vertically, so up and down. So I'm going to click on OK, and then I'm going to press it to the left, and then I'm going to press it up. And as you can see, it's done it all for me. Directional pad, this is just your D-pad on your controller, so left, right, up, down. C-stick or circle pad, circle pad, this is your analog stick, so the leftmost analog stick on your controller. So it should be exactly the same as we did with the C-stick. So click on set analog stick, click on OK, then do it left, and then do it up. And as you can see, it's configured itself. Next bit then, for me, click on start, click on select, and once that's done then, click on graphics. So at this stage, this is where things are really going to impact. And to be honest, it depends on the PC that you're running to what kind of settings we can put in here. And again, it depends on the game that we're running, how intensive it is, what kind of PC. So there's a lot of variables. So it's not really worth messing around too much at this stage until you get it running a game, and then you can kind of see what kind of performance you get in, and as we'll see in a second, how far we can push it depending on your computer. But for now, I'm going to keep everything as standard. There's nothing else I need to mess around with here except the layout of the screen. Default is one big screen at the top and the little screen at the bottom, but for me, I like to have the big screen as big as I can, so I'm going to go into default. I'm going to put this on large screen, so I get a massive main screen and a little tiny below screen in the bottom right hand corner. Next thing then, go into audio, leave this as default. You don't want to mess around with anything there, otherwise you may have issues with audio. Camera, this is a new addition. You can actually use your webcam now as it would be on your official 3DS. So choose which camera you want to mess around with. Me, I'm going to do it with the front camera, and then if you've got a webcam, it will show up here. If you've not, then put it on blank. But you can also, depending on what game you're playing, you can utilize the camera from the 3DS in virtually different ways. So if you haven't got a webcam, then you can upload a picture of yourself and pretend that this is a picture taken from your webcam, or you can actually use your camera itself and do it that way. Depends on your setup. But I'm going to leave this as standard as normal. Next thing then, don't mess around with anything in debug unless you're a pretty advanced user or you've been doing this for a while. Next thing then, it has got online play, and we'll talk about this more at the end of the video. Too much for now, let's put it that way. And then click on OK, and all those settings will now be held on your PC. So we now should be able to at least run a game. So first things first, double click on here to add a new folder to the games list. So now what CITRA does is, instead of just adding a game or looking for your game, you can actually get them all to display in the emulator itself. So double click on it. Now what I want to do is go to the location of where my game's at. So for me, it's in 3DS games. So as you can see on my desktop, I've got various different games in here, and these are in various different formats. Now for the games, you want to be getting them from your 3DS. You can dump them yourself. Again, in the description down below, I'll put a link to this place here, which is frequently asked questions with everything revolving around CITRA, how to get things working, involving getting your games and all that kind of stuff. But in here is a section on dumping your own games, so you can officially download them from your 3DS. Again, links are in the description. That'll guide you here, talk you through it all. or you can actually get ones that are installed on your 3DS, in other words eShop games, and they come in a different format also. CXI games are normally games that have been installed from the eShop, and your 3D.3DS games are ones that are dumped from the carts, let's say. Now, obviously, you can get these on the internet, all that kind of stuff, but we won't cover that because it depends on what country you're from, legalities, all that kind of stuff. So it's something that I can't cover in this video. But the official way of doing this is obviously downloading it through your 3DS. Now, I've got icons on mine. That's because I've got a program that actually recognizes 3DS files. So that's the reason. Yours may look different. Yours will probably be blank or tied to another application that you've got that recognizes. So don't worry about the icons for now. And as you can see, we've gone to the location of where we just put it to. If I do select folder, it will now import all those games that we just looked at into the the CITRA emulator. As you can see, they're all now here. They're all got the title. It tells you the compatibility, where it's from, the file type, and of course the size of the game. And you've also got some nice little handy icons to keep your eyes happy. Now for us, we're all set and ready to rumble now. We should be able to launch games from this moment on. But hang on before you start clicking off the video, because there is other stuff that we need to do for certain games. But for testing, let's launch a game up just to make sure everything is running. Now, I believe if you've got a pad that has got touch input, you can use it to do your actual touch input on the screen. But for me, I use my mouse, and this acts as on the right hand, or the bottom screen on this 3DS, which is emulated on the right hand side on the emulator. If I touch it in a certain location, then that's as if I'm pressing it on that screen. So let's get into the game. It should give me a screen on the right hand side. There we go. So if I was to press somewhere on the what would be the bottom screen on the 3DS, then I can click on whatever I want to in here, as you can see. Or of course most games do it, so you can use your controller. And there we go. We've got the game up and running and ready to rumble. But for us, what we want to do is certain games when you launch. Let's say for example Mario Kart 7. As you can see, it needs certain files from your 3DS. In other words, on your original 3DS, you've got a profile that is held in a certain location. Obviously, the CITRA team cannot give you that because, first off, it's your file and your profile, so they can't really mess around with that. Also, many of the files and folders that are in there are actually copyrighted to Nintendo, so it's unable for them to actually share it. But again, legally, you want to be dumping your own, and also you want to be using your own anyway, because that's your profile with all your save games, or your profile from your 3DS, and you get an all-round better experience doing it that way. So what we need to do now is exit out of here. So exit out, and what we want to do is add that folder to our CITRA setup. So let's exit out of the emulator, and I've got my user folder here. So in here we've got all different ones that have been dumped from my system. So let's exit out. Now what we want to do is put it in the location where CITRA knows where the magic's happening. So for me, what I want to do is load up File Explorer, go into the top tab at the top here, and what I want to put in there is percentage app data. App data, as you can see there. Then I want to do another percentage sign, and this will take me to a folder which is normally hidden by my computer. Click on there, and as we can see, it's taking me to my profile on my computer, an app data one, and it's taking me into roaming. This is where CITRA basically stores all your user profile data. So as you can see, I've already got a folder in there that CITRA made when we installed the emulator. Click on there, and as you can see, we've got various different folders that CITRA has made for our profile so far, just utilizing the emulator itself. What I want to do is put my profile into there. So let's double click on, and as you can see, the files or the folders match up with some of the ones that already exist. So I'm going to copy and paste. Now it will ask probably, do you want to overwrite certain files, because some of them have already been created by the the emulator itself. Yep, I want to replace them because now that's going to add my profile from my 3DS into the emulator itself, which is awesome. So let's exit out of there. Now when I launch it up, because I've got my profile that I've already made, CITRA may look a little bit different. Okay then, so once all that's done then, what you want to do is boot up the game again, get into a game, and now what we can do is start ramping this up. So as you can see, I've just booted up Mario Kart 7, and now everything is more or less set to default as we, well, set it up a few seconds ago. So yeah, everything is playing, and it's playing pretty damn well, but to be honest, it doesn't look as good as what it could. So I'm going to pause this. And now what we can do is go into the emulation tab, configure, and now we can start to ramp this puppy up. Now, the performance and how far you can push this, again, will depend on what kind of system you're running. If you've got more of a high-end PC, then you'll be able to push this a lot further. Those of you with AMD graphics cards, you may not see as good performance because of the way that it uses OpenGL. That's the driver that runs this emulator. And OpenGL isn't supported very well by AMD, or at least it's not compatible through this emulator using OpenGL. So if you have got the opportunity and it's not up to its full potential, and you have got an Intel based CPU, get better performance from disabling your graphics card through this emulator and utilizing your onboard one. Again, I'm not going to go through that in this video because that's very troublesome, time extensive, and that'll be for the few people out there. I'm sorry if it has happened, but I'll put a link in the description down below that will aid you to actually doing that for yourself. But for those of you who are doing pretty well and up to this stage, then now we can start to ramp things up. So I'm now going to go on to 720p, which should clear all this pixelated mess up and get it looking pretty damn good. I know that I can push mine a lot further, but for now, we're good with that. So as you can see, I've just enabled it, and now it looks beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, for those of you who want to take it further, most of you should be able to get up to 720p, no problem, even on a very low-end PC, even on onboard graphics. But for those of you who do want to take it even further, now we can start to push it up even further. Now, I know for a start that I can go all the way up to 4K. Now, many of you out there will whinge saying, why go to 4K? It's just a 3DS game, and there's no reason to. Well, yeah, texture-wise, you won't get much increases by pushing it that far, especially from, I don't know, 1080 to 4K. But the way that the game is rendered, 3D games, should I say, you will see a lot crisper detail on the outlines. Now, even if you're not running a 4K monitor or TV, you will still see better performance, because what's happening is this emulator hasn't really got anti-aliasing or post-processing going on. So even if you run it at the native resolution of your monitor, which is likely 1080p, you will still see a few jaggies from time to time. To push this even further, so it's more or less crystal clear, even at running at 1080p, then putting it onto 4K internal resolution, as we're going to do now, will clear up many of those jaggies so you get the best experience possible. So yeah, even though you're not playing it on a 4K monitor, you will get better visuals. But obviously, some of you may not be able to push it that far because your system may not be able to handle it. So keep on ramping up one step at a time until you get to a stage where you get the best experience possible graphically, but also of course you're not seeing any slowdowns whatsoever. Something that you want to be looking out for on here is in the bottom here, you've got speed 100% and you've got the game 60 frames per second. This is a 60 frames per second game. There are games out there that run at 30 frames per second. If you was to turn on a, I don't know, something like that gives you statistics on your system, it may show you there that it's running 60 frames per second, whereas down here it's showing 30 frames per second. That's because the game, or the emulator should I say, is running at 60, but it will only be outputting 30 frames per second. Does that make sense? So it's not interpolating, I can't even say that word, I can't say that word ever. It's not basically rendering every frame of them 60, it's just rendering 30 of those 60 frames. So that's why your graphics card or something that's monitoring your graphics may pick up 60 here, even though you're only getting 30 or in some cases 20, depending on what game you're playing, down here. So hopefully that's cleared up a few of your questions. So once you've done that, then you're pretty much good to go. Your emulator is good, you've ramped it up as far as you can. The only thing left to do is going back into graphics again Now, some games you may get graphical issues, you may get slowdowns, you may get all kinds of errors going on. Some games do recommend that you tick these boxes or untick them. Basically, if you hover over it again, you get a little thing saying what it's about. So this one is correctly handle all edge cases and multiplication operation in shaders. I wish they put that in layman's terms. So in other words, some games require this for a hardware shader to render properly. So we're running this at this moment by ticking this box using our GPU. If you untick it, then what it's going to do is it's going to run on your CPU. So you don't really want to be doing that, because then it goes back to the old version of CITRA, which ran really, really slow. So you should pretty much always have this ticked. However, by ticking this, some games may break. So by unticking and ticking some of these boxes, you will get the best experience depending on that game. But to be honest, for the majority of them, I more or less put everything off. So everything is handled by the actual GPU itself. For those problematic ones though, you may have to mess around with a couple of these settings. And again, depending on whatever layout you want to use, change this and it will do the different layout, as you can see, depending on whatever game you're playing. So to get the multiplayer side of it all set up, you do have to jump through a few hoops. First off, click on the furthermost tab in the configuration menu. It will give you a screen like this. So it says, by providing your username and token, you agree to CITRA to collect additional usage data, which may include user identifying information. In other words, you're going to be setting up a profile. Within that profile will have your information. They're just warning you that by doing it, you are going to be sharing that with the team. But of course, it's your option if you want to go down that route. So first thing to do is click on sign up. It will guide you to a section of the website, as you can see here. And at this point, you put in your Google account or your GitHub account, and then you can make a profile on the website, which will then allow you to make a token. So once you've done all that, put all the information, click on login, exit out, and go back to the emulator. Then once all that's done and you're signed into the website, you can put what is my token. It will guide you to this portion of the website here, and because you've already logged in, when you go to this section here of click here, it will give you a location on the internet which will have your token or your code there. I can't click on it because then you'll know mine and then I'll probably get bumped from people doing stuff on the internet, as it does. So click on there, it will give you a little code. Once that's done, then put the code into there, put whatever it is username that you signed up with there, click on verify, and you're good to go. The only thing that you need to do when you do go on the online thing and it's opened up is keep it active. So even though you're playing in game and stuff, there's a little chat room that you can see everybody online with in your room, and whatever game you'll choose to play, you sort it out with each other and then you're good to go that way. It's as if everybody is in the same room as you and you're playing multiplayer locally. Does that make any sense? I don't know. If there is any worries, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to do an in-depth version of this section. Obviously, I can only do it so much now because I would be releasing all my information, but for those of you who are struggling, I can make a burn account and do it that way. So hopefully now you are up and running, you've got everything configured, and you should be good to go. If you have got any issues, put them in the comments down below. I'm sure people will get involved. I've also got a Discord where you can, ask people in the community, people who have been along with this, ask about different emulators, all kinds of stuff in my Discord. And of course, CITRA has their Discord in there also. I'll link in the description that one, and of course the website. There's all kinds of information there. There's a frequently asked questions, there's a forum to get involved with. So there is lots of support with this emulator. And to be honest, the entire scene and community revolving around CITRA has always been awesome. They just nail it every time when it comes to the way of doing things, adding new features, and the way they roll stuff out. CITRA are top-notch people, and I tip my hat to them all. So that's about it for today, guys, but I think we've covered everything so far. Again, put in the comments down below what you'd like to see in the future, if there's any other emulators you'd like me to cover. But I think we have got everything sorted in this one. It has been an absolute pleasure bringing this one to you today. I've been meaning to do this for some time, but finally we've got around to it, and hopefully that will update a lot of you who've been struggling with the more recent versions, and of course those of you who are new to running 3DS on the PC also. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Please make sure you like, please make sure you subscribe, do all the things that you could ever imagine in this wonderful world where we get not just games working on our PC from the 3DS, but we push them to the absolute maximum, all the way to 4K 60 frames per second with whatever enhancements you desire. But most of all, you have a good day. Laters!